Part 53. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 524. Garen snapped the woman's neck and threw it aside. Without the ability to void itself, this female body is no different from the black shadow of power encountered for the first time, easy and simple. Garen searched the other two women and found nothing, so he could only break their necks and throw them away. In the darkness, the bodies of the three women slowly dissipated and melted, completely blending into the darkness. In fact, if this kind of female swordsman cannot catch the fleeting opportunity, even the strongest person will be beaten to death. After all, its power and speed are not weak at all, and three of them appear at once. The mastery of fighter planes can only be achieved by fighters with extremely sensitive speed and perception, and extremely rich fighting experience. Other types of people can only be killed directly. The darkness quickly faded away and returned to the original blue mist. Garen lifted his feet and continued to move forward. In the following time, waves of beautiful swordsmen continued to appear. From the beginning, they were easy to deal with, but later the swordsmen became faster and faster, which was a little more difficult. Garen dealt with more than 10 waves of attacks one after another. All of them were masked female swordsmen. They pulled off their masks, and the lower half of their faces were all the same. They were all bloody and rotten flesh without even a mouth. These swordsmen attacked first in groups of 3, then in groups of 2, and finally in groups of 1 person. As the number decreases, the strength of the swordsmen is also steadily increasing. By the time of the final solo group, the swordsman's strength had reached an extremely high level. The female swordsman's black sword was like a bolt of lightning in the darkness, constantly turning and slashing, without even a single breath or space. Continuous and extremely fast speed brings huge explosive power. The tower shield was completely destroyed after multiple impacts. Garen had to take matters into his own hands. The speed of the last female swordsman has surpassed him, reaching a level close to 20 speed attribute points. This seems to be the limit. The female swordsman's attack follows a jumping arc. The moment the black sword flashes, the blade it's already arrived on Garen. Garen called this technique leap slash. It was not a special ability, but a terrifying technique that simply exploded from the female swordsman's body. Garen paid the price of a deep scar on his shoulder and took the opportunity to smash the female swordsman to death to win. But he had to stay and wait for his body's natural and slow recovery. Although without the extraordinary power, the wound will heal much slower, the dragon heart of the 9-headed dragon also has a powerful recovery speed that is unmatched by ordinary creatures. After staying in place and resting for 3 full days, Garen's injuries no longer affected him and he got up and continued moving forward. In the past 3 days, he had also figured out the last jumping and slashing skills of the female swordsman. The female swordsman's physical fitness is far inferior to him, but she can burst out with such terrifying speed in an instant. The value of this technique can be imagined. After 3 days of study, and a long period of personal combat with the female swordsman, Garen finally figured out the key. As a fighting master who has seen a lot of secret martial arts, Garen's grasp and control of this kind of secret martial arts fighting without extraordinary power far exceeds that of the evil God King and the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace. This technique naturally doesn't have many secrets in his eyes. The powerful intelligence also played a huge role at this time, and he successfully analyzed and decomposed the principle of jump slash. This technique can instantly burst out at a speed close to 20 attribute points, but you must choose a weapon that is light and sharp enough. By grasping the rhythm of the weapon and body, and using special energy and blood operation skills, you must concentrate all your strength and use the weapon as a weapon. Shoot out the hidden weapons. Although this technique is powerful, its limit can only reach a speed attribute level close to 20, and its power is equivalent to the explosion of the 4th type of battle totem from the outside world. If it were outside, such a technique would be meaningless, but here, where only physical strength could be used to fight, the jump slash had a strong effect. This technique may be very taxing for female swordsmen, but for Garen, it is easy. It can be used as an ordinary skill. This is the effectiveness of a strong physique. Since entering the ruins, this is the second time he has benefited from it. The first time was to understand the dual skills, and this time it was a simple challenge skill. Both of these techniques can be used purely by yourself. No matter what environment you are in, with or without the power of the totem, the light of the totem will not be weakened. Garen suddenly understood. If what was described in the myth was true, then warlocks definitely have the ability to travel through the starry sky. There are countless planets in the starry sky, some of which have special environments and can use powerful abilities to pry the power to move the entire environment, and some areas are completely barren and cannot be leveraged at all, then those leveraging abilities will be greatly weakened. The only thing you can really rely on is your own body. The circulation of chi and blood in the body and the powerful force bursting out are the core reliance. Putting his mind away, Garen finally ate the remaining dried meat and took out the red button. Is anyone here? He has been like this almost every day these days, asking once every day, but there is no response from the other two sides. But this time it seemed like there was finally some movement. Hydra, a hoarse voice came from the button. It was the evil God King, and he sounded tired. Are you okay? The evil God King then asked. My physical condition is okay, but there is no water and food. Although it is okay to support him for a few weeks, my body will inevitably become weak. Garen said his troubles. I have tried. Before the attacking shadows disappear completely, you can eat their meat. You can try it. The evil God King is worthy of being the leader of a cult, and he is even more arrogant than Garen, a natural foodie. Okay, Garen also knew that there was no other way now. Anyway, Hydra has a terrible appetite, and its digestion and absorption efficiency is also extremely terrible. It can turn most substances into its own energy, and it will excrete it in the form of poisonous gas and poisonous mist. The situation is naturally extremely dangerous for others, but for Garen himself, it is clean and environmentally friendly. Where have you been? The evil God King continued to ask. The female swordsman is here. Similarly, the female swordsman at the end is very troublesome, and I am blocked here. According to the intelligence, the entrance to the third floor should be ahead, where the three passages will rejoin. The evil God King reminded. The guy who is the lord of the heavenly god palace has probably already. It's over. He paused. According to the information we have, in addition to the 3 original secret weapons, there is also a shadow magic mirror in this ruins. It is a powerful secret treasure that controls the shadows of the entire ruins. It is a war-type ancient Yinduo secret treasure. These shadows should. That's the effect of that secret treasure. What do you mean by this? Garen was slightly confused. It takes a long time to master the shadow mirror before it can be embedded into one's own spiritual will. It cannot be mastered in a short time. Next, we will encounter the strongest shadow creature. Before that, I have a suggestion. You say. I don't want my share of the secret martial arts of life, I just want that shadow mirror, the evil God King said sternly. That magic mirror involves the control of this ruins, right? Garen chuckled. Looking at it this way, the value of the two is almost the same, but other ruins of the Mibu of life can also be found, but the shadow mirror can only be found here. Getting it is equivalent to getting an unparalleled powerful shadow army. In fact, the value of the shadow mirror is even higher. However, Garen doesn't value these external things very much. He focuses on his own improvement. But obviously the evil God King's concept is different from his. Certainly. What do you want me to pay? Garen pondered for a while. There was silence for a long time, and Garen almost thought that the other party was disconnected before the sound came out again. Come here and help me deal with the female swordsman leader. I can't make it. The evil God King felt like he was gritting his teeth. Garen suddenly burst into laughter. Disconnecting the button, Now that he knew that the confluence of passages would soon be ahead, and that there should be no shadow creatures ahead, he no longer hesitated and sprinted forward at full speed. 3 passages, 3 people in the rear. Each passage has a vague black shadow moving forward quickly, and the shadow core hidden in the corner on the ground is constantly being absorbed and swallowed by the black shadow. His aura is getting stronger and bigger. From the beginning, it was only the lower level of Type 4, but it quickly became stronger. When Garen and others faced the female swordsman leader, this shadow had swallowed up all the other shadow cores and grown to the level of Type 5. The 3 passages and the 3 groups of shadows each have the aura of the 5th type level. All 3 are clones of the God of Light. Even if they were originally Type 5 strong men, as long as they have not reached their peak, the clones that have been separated over a long period of time will only have the strength of the lower level of Type 4. Just like the original Shen Yun, whose power was at the peak of Type 5, the clone only had the peak of Type 4, which was a big step down. But now, by absorbing the shadow core in the ruins, the 3 clones of the God of Light actually have the power of the 5th type, which makes him even more overjoyed. The clones have such powerful strength. If they merge together again, what height will the main body reach? This is equivalent to absorbing and swallowing all the energy of the shadow creatures in the ruins, and accumulating it as the light god himself. Just like the evil god king, with the power accumulated over a long period of time, even the talented pharaohs can't defeat him. He also squeezed into the ranks of the top experts. As his strength increased, the ambition in the God of Light's heart grew bigger and bigger. Occasionally sensing the 3 strongest men moving in front of him, he could not help but feel an inexplicable and huge desire in his heart. If the evil god king dies here, then the evil god cult will witness the birth of a new evil god king. As for the other 2, if they kneel down honestly and become his subordinates, I can give them a chance to spare their lives, but if they don't want to. Apart from the evil god king, the light god's attention is mainly focused on Garen. This terrifying genius has reached such a height in just a few years. He is simply a replica of the original Ghost sect. Such a genius definitely has a huge secret, and this speed of progress cannot be explained clearly by pure qualifications. Just like the Ghost Gate back then. How did Garen get the 9-headed dragon totem, and why does he have the infinite life talent that is different from the data? These are mysteries that are difficult to explain. There are too many smart people in the world who will notice the anomalies in Garen, but because of his extremely tyrannical strength, no one dares to pursue it too closely. But now it's different. In this ruins and special environment, the God of Light is now confident enough to completely surround and kill the 3 people after mastering the magic mirror. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 525. Garen stood in front of the end of a dark passage. In front of him was a sealed and blocked passage wall, and there were no other branching roads around. He carefully checked his surroundings and found that there was no way in or out. Is it a dead end? Garen narrowed his eyes, walked to the passage on the right, stretched out his hand and lightly knocked on the hard stone wall. Then he walked around the entire dead passage wall and kept tapping the stone wall of the passage with his hands, making a thumping sound. Finally, he stopped in front of a stone wall in the passage and slammed his elbow. Bang! A big hole was easily smashed into the originally hard stone wall. The crashing gravel fell, and Garen expanded the area around the big hole a few times, making it bigger. Only when it was big enough for one person to bend down and go in did he stop. There was a slight light in the cave, which was completely different from the passage shrouded in blue mist outside. Garen got into the hole, and there was another small hall inside. More than a dozen stone tables and chairs were placed upright. The walls were carved with stone carvings of wolf and animal heads. The ceiling above was also inlaid with more than a dozen round luminous gems, forming a ring shape and casting a faint yellowish light. In ordinary people's eyes, this light is just a little glimmer, and they can't even see things 1 meter away. But under Garen's eyes, The entire small hall is as bright as day. The small hall is cylindrical in shape, about 10 meters in diameter. There are more than 10 white bones lying on the ground. The bones are covered with a white film that looks like a spider web. It is obvious that the flesh and blood of the deceased have been exhausted. It has been weathered and dried up like this over time. Garin walked to these bones and inspected them carefully. More than 10 bones were all of normal human height and shape. There were scattered fragments of clothes around them. They turned to dust with a light step. There is also a small round arch door connected to the right side of the entire small hall. Garin could not find any benefit from the bones, so he could only get up and walk into the small door. Behind the small door was a long and narrow passage, with openings every 10 meters above, set with a bright yellow luminous gemstone. Garin walked a few hundred meters forward when he heard faint footsteps in front of him. He originally thought it was the echo of his own footsteps, but when he listened carefully, he found that the rhythm was wrong and he suddenly stopped. The other party obviously heard the movement here and stopped almost at the same time. "Hydra," a low voice asked from the front. The voice was clear and cold, and it was the voice of the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace. The leader of the Lair Master slowly walked out of a three-way intersection in front of the passage and faced Garin head-on. He was still wearing the green cloak, but the hem of the cloak became tattered, obviously due to the battle along the way. However, there didn't seem to be any injuries on his body. "It turns out that the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace has arrived," Garin responded with a smile. "I wonder how long it took the Palace Master to arrive." "About 4 days," the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace answered casually without any attempt to hide it. Garin felt a shiver in his heart. He was able to arrive here 4 days in advance. Obviously, this guy's strength is definitely not as good as that of him who has now mastered the dual skills. This made him even more wary. After all, the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace is not a human being. If he really has any alien intentions, it would be really difficult to deal with him in this closed ruins. Garin glanced at the fork in the fork. There were 3 forks in the entire fork. He was standing in one of them. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace was standing in the fork opposite him. There was no one in the middle one. It was obviously the passage where the evil God King entered. Garin stared at the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace and hesitated for a while. The two of them stopped talking. The other party was obviously a little surprised that he came out first instead of the evil God King who took the lead in exploring the ruins. "I'll go see how the evil God King is doing," Garin whispered and walked directly towards the middle branch, secretly guarding against the movements of the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace. It wasn't until he had completely walked a long way into the middle fork in the road and could no longer see the figure of the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace that Garin slowly relaxed. "I quickly walked forward along the passage, and after running for about an hour, there was a faint sound of metal weapons colliding in front of me. Soon, the blue mist in the passage ahead gradually disappeared, replaced by a vast expanse of complete darkness. In the darkness, the evil God King in red robes was chased by a black electric light and ran away in a somewhat embarrassed manner, looking extremely embarrassed. "Help me!" Seeing Garin arriving, the evil God King suddenly beamed with joy. Garin glanced around and saw a large fragment of a tower shield lying on the ground. It was sharp in shape, like a 3-pointed cone. He lifted his foot and grabbed the fragment in his hand. Leap slash. The whole body's strength quickly gathered, twisted, and formed a spring-like structure, and then suddenly released with Garin's breathing. Boom! A bolt of lightning instantly flashed from the fragments in the hand. Just at the moment when the female swordsman leader struck half of the shield in the evil God King's hand, it hit the female swordsman precisely at the waist. With a tearing sound, the female swordsman was torn in half and cut off at the waist. The corpse quickly turned into a black shadow and merged into the darkness, and the blue mist filled the surroundings of the passage again. Everything became calm again. The evil God King was panting heavily, with a few drops of sweat dripping from his masked chin from time to time. The robe on his body was also slightly damp with sweat and clung to his body. Thank you. He leaned against the wall, took out the water bottle and took a deep drink, then closed his eyes and began to rest. Garen didn't take it seriously and waited quietly. More than half an hour later, the evil God King finally opened his eyes. Thank you very much this time. Don't hide anything from me. Garen was a little dissatisfied with the secret treasure of the shadow mirror popping up behind him. This news should be made clear first, rather than after entering. If the evil God King hadn't been unable to deal with the shadow swordsman, he would probably have swallowed the magic mirror himself. It's my fault, but the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace doesn't know about this either. After being helped by Garen this time, the evil God King's attitude became much gentler, and he truly put Garen on an equal footing with himself. The grievances caused by the last 1,000-mile chase have also eased a bit. The Shadow Mirror is the control center of the entire ruins. This place was not originally an underground residential city at all, but a military fortress. The remaining shadow creatures inside are actually left over after countless years. The original shadows, the number and strength of the shadow troops controlled by the magic mirror are far greater than they are now, but problems have arisen over a long period of time. I don't care about the shadow mirror, don't forget the conditions you promised before. Of course, the evil God King nodded. There are 3 parts of the secret weapon of life, one is of ice nature, one has strong vitality, and the other one is a metal weapon that I originally planned. Metal weapons are fine, too. Garen agreed after thinking for a moment. Garen, you haven't come into contact with the secret martial arts of life before, right? The evil God King called Garen by his first name with a hint of affection. This small detail seemed to show that he wanted to ease the relationship between the two. Good. I have some relevant news here. I wonder if you are interested in hearing it. The evil God King extended an olive branch, trying to repair the relationship with Garen. Let's talk. As we walk back, Garen was worried that he didn't know the news about Chenzi Maiwu, so naturally he didn't refuse at all. There is no relevant information about the secret martial arts in Khautan in the Royal Library of Khautan. This kind of thing is a secret that only top experts are qualified to know, and it is impossible to store it in the so-called secret library. On the way forward, the evil God King carefully told Garen the specific information about the secret martial arts of life. The secret martial arts of life itself has a certain degree of evolution. Generally, if the secret martial arts of life is successfully practiced, it will blend all the strength, energy, and blood in the practitioner's body, and even the source of the power will be completely absorbed, merged, and shrunk, refined into a seed of power. This seed will follow the most suitable direction of esoteric martial arts tempering, discard the impurities in it, and then reabsorb the practitioner's spirit and will, gradually growing into an esoteric martial arts form that is completely suitable for the practitioner himself. At this time, the secret martial arts ability actually does not need to be practiced once it is successfully cultivated and grown. Instead, it forms an instinct that is close to a natural talent. The so-called secret martial arts effect actually becomes the instinct of the body itself. The entire secret martial arts of life is like a living creature. It uses the spiritual will, fighting skills, and power source of the practitioner as nourishment. When it matures, it gradually grows into a more unified and powerful secret martial arts instinct. It will form a natural mysterious system rooted in the body of the practitioner, and truly embed the refined secret martial arts ability into the practitioner's body, forming a terrifying ability similar to instinct. Along the way, Garen continued to learn more about all the information about the secret martial arts of life mentioned by the evil God King. The more he understood, the more incredible he felt. This secret weapon is no longer just a secret weapon, but an indescribable mysterious seed. Then can one person practice the secret martial arts of 2 kinds of life? Garen asked again after digesting the information from the evil God King. I'm afraid not, but you can absorb the advantages and disadvantages of the 2 secret martial arts of life, eliminate the power secret martial arts system, Reinstill your own spiritual will, peel off the power seed of the secret martial arts of life, and turn it into your own, the seed of strength. The evil God King explained, this is what the master of the heavenly God Palace intends to do. Otherwise, the master of the nest would never have his own secret martial arts of life. Is this still possible? Garen was slightly surprised. Of course you can, but you must have a very good understanding of the student's secret martial arts, and at the same time, you must be able to avoid being rejected by your own secret martial arts system before you can try it. If you fail, the consequences will be very serious. The root of your own spiritual will and strength will be instilled in you, will completely disappear, and the indoctrinator's years of hard work will be completely in vain. This is a root loss in memory and body, which cannot be undone. Once it fails, the power of years of indoctrination will be lost instantly. The evil God King somewhat emotional. It will be very, very difficult for the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace to walk the path of being the Lord of the Nest. Garen nodded involuntarily. The two walked forward for a while, and finally returned to the intersection of the three passages. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace was still leaning against the stone wall, closing his eyes and concentrating. Finally, hearing the footsteps, he opened his eyes and looked at the two of them. You can enter the third level. The evil God King nodded at him. He took out a small yellow paper bag from his arms. If you want to open the entrance to the third floor as quickly as possible, it is most convenient to use this. I didn't expect it to be used in the Burning Man level, but it is used here. Garen also took out his share of the explosive packets, and the three of them put the explosive packets together at the same time, exactly at the center of the fork in the road. After the three of them retreated, the evil God King took out the match from his arms, lit it with a bang, and threw it towards a fuse connected to the explosive pack. Hiss! A subtle sound of burning fuses was heard. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 526. In an instant, a blazing red light suddenly lit up from the ground of the fork. Boom! The strong smell of gunpowder smoke permeated everywhere. The white-yellow smoke completely covered the entire branch of the passage. The Lord of Tianshan Palace gently slapped his left hand deep inside. Call! A whirlwind emerged, and his left hand brought up an afterimage in an instant, as if it divided into more than 10 palms, fanned forward at the same time, and then merged into one in an instant. The strong wind blew the thick smoke directly into the three passages, and soon the underground appearance of the center was revealed. I saw a large irregular black pit on the ground on the left side of the forked road, and subtle black cracks could be vaguely seen in the pit. It was obviously the hole created by the explosives just now. In this environment where extraordinary power cannot be used, it is most labor-saving to use a large amount of special explosives to find the entrance. Of course, 3 people can find and get out of the entrance, but it is not as fast and direct as explosives. The huge shock caused by the explosion can reveal the hidden entrance without having to search for the specific location. There is also an entrance here. The master of the Tianshan Palace frowned slightly at this time and pressed his hand on the right wall, where a small cracked hole was actually shaken. Which of the 2 cave entrances is it? The evil God King asked in a deep voice. Let's go in separately and take a look. Although Garen said so, he had already reached the entrance of the underground cave and paused with his right foot. Bang! Large pieces of gravel on the ground were trampled down, revealing a deep, dark passage below, like a dark well that led to nowhere. The master of the Tianshan Palace over there has also silently enlarged the hole in the wall, revealing an oval entrance large enough for one person to enter and exit, with a faint blue mist emerging inside. The evil God King narrowed his eyes and followed Garen to the deep well. The two exchanged glances. Garen jumped and fell directly into the mouth of the well. The evil God King also jumped in. Soon the road branched and only the master of the heavenly god palace was left. He looked at the hole on the ground and turned directly towards the hole on the wall. Entrance. Bang. Garin fell hard to the ground, creating a small crater of more than 1 meter in size. The ground is burnt black stone. This is a huge charred cave, with dark red and charred stones everywhere on the walls, and a black stone cliff in the center of the cave. It was like a black iron rod piercing a large oval hole. The cliff extends back and is connected to a dark metal gate on the cave wall. Garin was half crouching on the cliff at this time. He looked up and saw that there was a narrow opening directly above the cave, which was the entrance where he fell. Call. Another red shadow fell down, turned slightly in the air, and hit the cliff stone ground behind Garin hard, making a small crater with the same bang. Here we are, the Hall of Glory. The evil god king stood up and straightened his robe. His expression was slightly complicated. This is where the heavenly god palace master's secret flame weapon is located. It's not ours. Is this where the secret weapon is located? Garin was slightly curious and looked around, but did not find any special place to hide the secret weapon. He walked to the edge of the cliff and looked down. Below him was an endless dark abyss, no one knew how deep it was. He picked up a stone the size of his head and threw it down. After waiting for several minutes, there was no response. So deep Garin frowned. Be careful not to fall. There is the abyss of the dead below. If you fall, you will fall forever without any end. You will have no food or drink and will keep falling until you die, the evil god king reminded. It's not the time for the secret weapon to appear yet. We must first go to the secret room to deal with the last guardian, and then enter the secret room to obtain the magic mirror and secret weapon certificates before we can obtain our own secret weapon seeds separately. Where is the secret room? Garin looked at the evil god king. Obviously he knew more about the inside story, and now he could only rely on his guidance. There the evil god king pointed at the black metal gate behind the cliff. The two of them walked directly to the metal gate without any hesitation. Click. Suddenly, the metal door gradually made a subtle clicking sound from the inside to the outside. In the middle of the door, a bit of black suddenly appeared, and then like a piece of paper lit by fire, the black burned from the center to the surroundings, and black flames danced, and the entire Gundam several meters of metal gates were burned silently, revealing a bright hall at the back. The two walked in one after the other. The hall is like a huge empty church, with stained glass windows on the surrounding walls and a spire ceiling dozens of meters high above. The ground was paved with worn-out black and white stone tiles, and most of the rows of black benches used for prayer were in tatters. Right in front, there was a dirty silver-black prayer podium with a clean black narrow-necked vase inside, with a withered black rose. Garin looked towards both sides of the church. There were some khaki barrels on the ground, and there were reliefs of flowers and angels on the walls between the windows. Some colorful window cracks cast tiny beams of sunlight through. Are you sure we're not back on the ground? Garin narrowed his eyes and looked at the evil god king in front of him. We are still in an unknown depth underground. Do you think it is possible to unknowingly send us back to the surface instantly without teleportation? The evil god king said in a deep voice without turning his head. Answer. If you look carefully, it's not sunlight. It's golden magma. Garin was stunned for a moment, and immediately looked carefully at the cracks in the window. Sure enough, the golden color projected from those cracks was indeed flowing slightly, and it turned out to be golden magma. These beams of light are actually beams of light projected from the dazzling magma. The entire cathedral is actually surrounded by countless golden magma. The gaps exposed by the surrounding windows were filled with golden magma, projecting golden beams of light, illuminating the entire cathedral as if it were daytime. While the two were observing their surroundings, a small door on the left side of the church was slowly opened, and a green figure walked out, who was the lord of the heavenly god palace who had separated earlier. When he saw the two of them there, he was slightly startled, and then began to look at his surroundings. When he saw the golden lava, his eyes froze slightly, showing a solemn look. "Everyone is here now," the evil God King nodded at him. The moment the Lord of Tianshan Palace entered the church, the entrance where the three people came in, whether it was the main door or the small door, all quickly faded and disappeared. It turned into a bare black relief wall, as if there was no entrance gate from the beginning. The three people's hearts jumped slightly, and they immediately came together. At this moment, the withered rose in the black vase on the prayer platform moved slightly. Ah! Suddenly there was a scream, like a woman's crazy hysterical scream. The three of them were caught off guard and their brains suddenly stopped. They saw that the withered rose in the vase was like a living vine, quickly growing a large number of small and dense black roots. From a distance, it seemed as if black mucus was flowing out of the vase, flowing down the podium, and flowing down the stage. When it reaches the ground, it is a black liquid composed of countless vines and roots. After a large number of vine roots flowed down, they quickly condensed and grew taller, becoming taller and stronger. Soon, in less than 10 seconds, a huge black tree man more than 10 meters high appeared in front of the three people. Roar! The black tree man leaned down, opened his mouth, and let out a violent roar. "I will promise ma Sela," the tree man actually roared in some unknown language. Countless black vines suddenly stretched out from its two black eyes, and quickly weaved into its hands into a huge war hammer that was more than 10 meters long and 5 or 6 meters thick. Call! The huge war hammer crashed down towards the three of them. Boom! With a loud noise, Garen and the three men suddenly dispersed, nimbly avoiding the giant hammer bombardment. But then, the tree man suddenly pulled out a vine and struck behind the three of them accurately, like a whip. There were loud bangs one after another, and the three of them were hit hard, hitting the corner of the church like cannonballs. Bang! Garen felt his whole body was dizzy, and in front of his eyes was chaos. The world turned upside down, and he flew directly out of the air, slamming into the large pile of wooden barrels on the ground. Amidst a sudden crashing sound, he shook his head and slowly stand up from the barrel fragments. Just in time to see the giant tree man swing his giant hammer and hit the lord of the god palace, who stood up again. Before the giant hammer hit it completely, the huge force sent out a clear ripple of air, pushing away the fragments of tables, chairs, and dust on the ground. The heavenly god palace master's ears suddenly turned black and pointed, and his arms suddenly raised to face the giant tree man's giant hammer. Ah! The piercing female scream suddenly sounded again, and the movements of the lord of the god palace suddenly froze. Boom! He was directly smashed into the ground by the giant hammer. He could only see a big pit on the ground. Countless dust and gravel were raised, making it difficult to see what was inside the pit. "It's been a long time since I've enjoyed such one-sided suppression." Garen let out a low laugh and wiped away the blood flowing from his forehead. In another part of the church, the evil god king was spinning at high speed, with his arms wide open, and his whole body was like a red wheel, making a slight piercing sound. In an instant, his entire movement suddenly stopped, from extreme movement to extreme stillness. Laugh! A bolt of red lightning shot out from his body. Almost immediately, it appeared between the eyebrows of several people's heads. It was a red flying knife. With a bang, the giant tree man's head raised slightly, and a huge black hole appeared, but it was quickly filled with black vines. It suddenly raised the giant hammer and swept towards the direction of the evil god king with a roar. However, he was avoided by the evil god king, who was already prepared. There was a loud crash, and the benches and several gray-white angel stone statues on the other side of the church were directly smashed. After sweeping the giant hammer in a circle, it was swung into a circle and smashed again towards the evil god king, who had just stood firm. However, Garen's figure did not know when it appeared at the right foot of the tree man. He drew a circle with his arms, forming a palm on his chest, and at the same time, his chest took a deep breath and sank. The whole person seemed to have shrunk in size. Wang Xiangtian Luo. With a loud roar, accompanied by violent sound waves, Garen's palms exploded forward, stamping on the right legs of several people. The all-out explosion of dual techniques, the second stage release formed by the superposition of the Vientiane heavenly law. A powerful move equivalent to twice the galleons, accompanied by a huge sound wave roar, hit the giant tree man's right leg hard. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 527. Click. The black tree man's right leg suddenly fell to his knees and was broken off. A large amount of dust flew up in the air. Garen took the opportunity to retreat from the lightning below and landed at a farther distance, watching the movements of the black tree people from a distance. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace was getting up from the pit at this time, covered in blood, and his green cloak was completely dyed red and black. He shook his head, and his entire head had turned into the shape of pointed ears covered with black scales. Laugh. 4 arms suddenly popped out from under his arms, like mantis-like scythe arms, faintly glowing with a dazzling silver shimmer under the golden light. His 2 original arms gradually turned into 2 sickle-like folding blades. A total of 6 arms opened and closed slightly, making a grinding and cutting sound. Silently, the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace suddenly disappeared from where he was, and appeared in the middle of the black tree man's chest, almost teleporting. With a bang, the 6 blade arms pierced the black tree man's chest, and then began to cut at high speed like a blender. The 6 blade arms completely turned into invisible shadows. A large number of vines and black tree roots were cut off and flew down. Roar. The black tree man who had re-healed his injured leg staggered back a few steps, with countless black tree roots and vines protruding from his body, like tentacles grabbing at the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace from all directions. Die. The evil God King's voice suddenly sounded. In an instant, a dazzling red light suddenly shot into the hole in the black tree man's right eye. The black tree man suddenly raised his head and half knelt on the ground again with a pop. A red light suddenly penetrated from the back of his head, and with a bang, it was nailed to the wall behind him. It was a sharp dagger shining with red light. The evil God King did some somersaults and landed lightly under the position of the flying knife. He picked up a stone under his feet and knocked the flying knife down with a clang, and it fell steadily back to his hand. Garen also appeared beside him at this time and stood firm. "Is this guy the last guardian?" he asked in a low voice, looking at the huge black tree man who was confronting the Lord of the Celestial Palace. "It should be, I don't know very well." The evil God King stared at the tree man intently. "Be careful, this tree man is not that simple. You go up and I go down." Garen rushed out, his arms like the 1,000-armed Avalokitesvara, bringing up countless after-images. In an instant, he clasped his hands in front of his chest, and his eyes suddenly turned into darkness. Blackwater's true power is operating at full strength. Zai Feng. A pure wind sound like a giant bird suddenly sounded next to him. A pair of translucent airflow wings suddenly opened from behind him. The palm suddenly thrust forward. Garen's whole body was like a stabbing sword, stabbing the black tree man's left leg joint in an instant. The giant bird composed of invisible airflow made a shrill scream, and the totem-like wings were beside Garen, and it also spread its wings and flew towards the black tree man. This is simply the use of top shock techniques, combined with the precise control of the King of the Century or above, to form the top fighting ultimate move, Zai-Fang Fist. It is also one of the 4 most powerful moves among all fighting techniques. Combined with the full power of Hai Shui's true power now and a higher level of precise control, the power of this blow has far surpassed the Zai-Fang Fist in the secret martial world. He clasped his palms together and thrust forward. When the palm edges broke through the air at high speed, they made a shrieking sound like a giant bird, controlling the surrounding air to form an extremely sharp air knife. Laugh. The black tree man's left leg was suddenly broken at the knee joint. Its whole body suddenly fell forward and fell to the ground. A huge hole appeared in the chest, and in the middle stood the lord of the god palace with a green light shining between his eyebrows. The evil god king rolled over and turned into a red wheel, spinning downwards. The red wheel stopped, and he held the dagger in both hands and stabbed it hard into the tree man's brow. Bang bang bang. Several explosions sounded from the tree man's head. Several large holes exploded directly into the tree man's face. The three of them stood up at the same time, left the tree man's body, looked at the silent black tree man, and exchanged glances with each other. A large number of vines on the tree man's body spread out immediately, and soon formed a huge black ring on the ground around the tree man. Wow! The moment the ring was formed, the wounds on the black tree man's body quickly healed again. The three people's expressions changed slightly, and they rushed forward again, but three vines entangled one of their legs from below. By the time the three of them cut off the vines on their legs, the black tree man had recovered his body and climbed up again. It's an immortal body. The evil god king is most familiar with this ability. This guy's power cannot be resisted. Even if it is placed in the outside world, it is the top of type 5. Our strength is limited here, and we must find a way. The immortal body must have the power to regenerate and find the source of destruction. The cold voice of the Lord of the heavenly God palace came from not far away. Not the head, nor the chest. Garen's eyes suddenly lit up. That vase. Do it. The master of the heavenly God palace stepped on it, causing large cracks to open on the ground, and he rushed towards the black tree man like a cannonball. The other two people spread out at the same time, forming a triangle to surround the tree man. Garen did not look at the other two people, but gathered his strength and walked around the tree man, trying to observe and find the source of the tree man's power. The three consecutive double skills he just used were also a huge burden for him. It has reached its limit, and any further use will really harm the body. The other two were obviously similar. The terrifying and powerful killing ability just now must have come at a price, otherwise they would not have dispersed to rest after the black tree man fell to the ground. This time the three of them delayed their recovery and led the black tree men around the church hall. Time passed bit by bit, and by the time the three of them had almost recovered, the entire hall had been completely reduced to tattered ruins. There are holes of varying depths everywhere on the walls and on the ground. Some windows have been broken, and some golden lava has been pressed in along the holes, like blood flowing out of wounds on the walls, slowly and thickly. There is a black ring suspended around the black tree man. It is a black rotating ring composed of countless vine roots. It is rotating at high speed all the time. The sharp edges allow it to cut whatever it touches, making it indestructible. Once when the Lord of the heavenly God palace rushed towards the black tree man, he was hit by the circle. 3 of his 6 blade arms were instantly broken, and he could barely block the cutting circle and retreated. But even like this, his vitality has been severely damaged, and his eyes are dim and lifeless. It is obvious that these 6 blade arms are not only his weapon attack method, but also closely connected with part of the origin of his body. From then on, the 3 of them no longer dared to confront the black tree people, but wandered away to wait for recovery. As more and more magma flowed into the church, and the area that could be moved became smaller and smaller, the 3 finally decided to fight head-on, and their bodies were almost recovered. If he continues like this, there will be no room for flexible movement, and no matter how strong he is, he will be crushed to death by the black tree people. Garen's upper body was almost soaked with blood, and he panted and landed on a black gravel bulge in the magma. From a distance, he watched the inflexible black tree man being entangled by the other 2. The black vase should be in the palm of his left hand, he shouted. After observing for so long, he finally discovered the location of the source of the black tree man's power. However, although his body has recovered somewhat now, the poisonous smoke and high temperature emitted by the magma are baking his lungs, causing him to be somewhat unable to use his strength now. If it weren't for his physical constitution that prevented him from being poisoned, his current condition would probably be even worse for another person. The evil god king had lost much strength due to the poisonous smoke and high temperature of the magma, and could only barely entangle and interfere with the black tree people. Only the master of the heavenly god palace still had some strength left, and every movement seemed to be easy and effortless. Although two sword arms were broken, his strength and speed were still not greatly affected. The magma seemed to pose no threat to him. Many times he stepped directly into the magma without any damage. After hearing Garen's words, the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace's eyes flashed, and his legs actually began to deform slightly, turning into two sharp silver scimitar blades, which plunged into the ground with a hiss. In an instant, his entire body turned into a phantom and rushed towards the left arm of the black tree man. Garen was half crouching in place. Although he managed to recover at this time, his body was in a mess. During the struggle, he was hit twice by vines without paying attention. His body was already covered with countless hidden wounds. If it weren't for the powerful recovery power brought by the dragon heart, he would have died of massive internal bleeding from his forehead. Without the extraordinary power, Kyuzuryu's super innate ability has no place to reflect. This situation is probably the most dangerous since he traveled through time. If the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace cannot deal with the Black Tree people, the three of them will probably die in this sealed chamber. This tree man has at least 30 points of strength. His speed is estimated to be around 10 points, his body is immortal, and he doesn't have more than 15 points of strength. Don't try to penetrate his skin. There are also cutting rotating rings around him. This is simply an extremely terrifying war machine. Garen secretly estimated the physical quality and abilities of this black tree man, and the result made him tremble a little. If this monster were placed in the outside world and not surrounded by several peak powerhouses, it would be possible to destroy the entire world. Now only the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace has any remaining strength. Garen stood up and was about to rush forward to continue to contain the Black Tree people. He must create opportunities for the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace. Suddenly, a black vine suddenly popped out from behind him, hitting the back of his head like a whip. Garen turned around and jumped up, avoiding the vines as if there were eyes on the back of his head. Then he rolled sideways, avoiding a ball of golden magma that shot towards him, and landed with a bang. Standing up straight again, Garen suddenly had a vine tip emerging from his feet in his hand. He grasped the vine tightly with both hands to prevent it from piercing his face. The arms and the vines continued to struggle, and Garen fiercely pressed the vines back and away from him. At this moment, in the center of the field, the battle group on the other side of the Heavenly Palace Master and the Black Tree Man exploded. Boom! The black cutting ring was like a bomb, turning into countless raindrop-like vine spikes, exploding in all directions. Large black spikes were like black rain, densely shooting towards every corner of the entire church. Countless screams that pierced the air merged into one sound, and the eardrums of Garen's three people were shattered at the same time, causing blood to flow out. But the most dangerous thing at this time is not this, but the countless lasing spikes. Garen mustered up his strength and deflected more than a dozen spikes directed at him, but each of these spikes had more than 20 points of strength. Finally, he couldn't keep up with the strength of his arm. Laugh! A sharp thorn pierced his left shoulder. Ah! Garen roared angrily, waving his hands almost into two shadows, but a few spikes still leaked in, piercing his right chest, lower abdomen, and knees. A long-lost feeling of weakness continued to emerge from his body. Garen's right knee was broken and he knelt on the ground with a bang. At this moment, the last and largest spike suddenly shot toward his forehead. Garen mustered up the last of his strength and put his hands on his head. Laugh! The sharp thorns pierced both of Garen's palms and pierced a small section of his forehead between his eyebrows. Garen's head jerked back with the inertia, and his whole body was pushed back several meters by the sharp thorn. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He tilted his head and fell to the ground unconscious. Bright red blood slowly oozed out from the edge of the wound between the eyebrows, and was soon burned into red and black by the high temperature. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 528. The evil God King was on the side. Except for his head, his whole body was almost beaten into a sieve. His body was densely covered with transparent holes. His legs and hands were broken and fell to the side. There were 2 bloody holes in the cheeks on both sides of the face, the ears were torn off and flew to unknown places, and a large piece of flesh was missing on the right side of the neck, exposing the white trachea and red arteries. Although he was not knocked unconscious, he was even more unlucky than Garin. Although he was conscious, he was completely unable to move. Like a broken doll, lying on the ground, almost touching the spreading magma. Seeing the golden lava slowly approaching, he could not move at all. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace was currently stringing the black vase with his sword arm. The huge black tree man fell to the ground and turned into countless black vine roots. These vine roots quickly withered and turned yellow, slowly melted, and disappeared into the ground with thick black smoke. Apart from being in a mess, the entire church was no longer able to find any traces left by the black tree man. The Lord of Tianshan Palace slammed the black vase on the ground. Wow! The vase suddenly shattered into countless pieces. Ah! The high-pitched scream sounded again and stopped suddenly. The vase fragments immediately melted and turned into the same black smoke, which faded and disappeared. The eyes of the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace were dark, and his blade arms and legs all returned to normal human hands and feet. As soon as he recovered, he staggered and almost lost his balance. Apparently it has reached the point where it has almost run out of fuel. Boom! At this moment, a triangular black stone platform suddenly fell from above the church and hit the church ground hard. Carved on the stone platform is a stone statue of an angel kneeling down and praying with his eyes closed. He is holding a cross sword in both hands and has a pious expression. There are countless vine roots wrapped around him. Directly in front of the angel stone statue, a cluster of vines rose up to form a black arm, with 3 ancient items like black badges placed in the palm of the hand. Secret martial arts certificate. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace recognized what was on his palm at a glance. He took a deep breath and tore off half of the tattered cloak to avoid tripping himself. He glanced at the 2 people not far away. The evil God King was almost in a dying state and could not move, while Hydra was slightly better, but was also seriously injured and fell into a coma. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace staggered towards the angel stone platform. Bang! Suddenly, a big hole was opened in the church ground on the left side, and a black hand stretched out from the hole, grabbing the edge. A black shadow jumped out of the big hole and landed gently on the edge of the black hole. It was a human figure made of pure black energy. It scanned the situation on the field. Sure enough. Just as expected, ha 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 ha, Black Shadow raised his head and couldn't help laughing. Who are you? Hearing the familiar Shania language, the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace felt his heart sink and looked at the Black Shadow intently. The pace that was originally heading towards the stone platform also slowly accelerated. Although the location has changed slightly, the final result is still very satisfying to me. A black oval silver-rimmed mirror condensed in the Black Shadow's hand, and the black air lingered on the mirror, as if it had no entity. Light God, the evil God King on the side suddenly spoke out, his voice hoarse, with almost no real sound, just the sound of airflow. God King, you didn't expect it to be me, did you? The God of Light chuckled, and his body suddenly condensed into reality, returning to the original appearance of the God of Light, still the handsome man with white clothes and white eyes. It's just that at this time, his expression was already complacent to a certain extent. Forget it, the 3 of you are the most powerful people in the world. It would be bad if something unexpected happens again. I'd better send you on your way first. The God of Light held up the magic mirror and took a sharp look at the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace. Bang! The master of the heavenly god palace was about to touch the angel stone platform, but at this moment, as if he was hit by an invisible fist, he rolled backwards and lay on his back on the ground. He tried to get up again, but he had no strength left. The shadow mirror can transform living beings into powerful shadows in it, and even the soul obeys its orders. Hey, there can be 3 such powerful shadows. The god of light couldn't help laughing. Once the 3 people are turned into demon shadows, all the wealth, power, influence, and secrets they control will become his. At that time, he will truly be the most powerful force in the world. Even if he unifies the 2 states, the East and West, and the world will be achieved. King, it is not impossible. When he thought of this, the burning heat in Guangxin's heart almost burst out. He didn't expect that the situation would get so good. The 3 peak experts and the guardian were both injured, and in the end they were unable to fight back. This is simply the best opportunity God's destiny has given him. Thoughts flashed through his mind. He picked up the magic mirror again and pointed it at the Lord of the Palace of Gods. Bang! The palace owner was knocked out again, but he stood up again tenaciously, his eyes firm and unwavering. The god of light suddenly frowned. The power of the magic mirror would change with the distance. The closer the distance, the stronger the power. The master of the heavenly god palace obviously knew this principle because of the evil god king, and he himself did not dare to approach easily. Who knows what other trump cards these peak experts might have that would be useless, and it would be troublesome if the ship capsizes. He glanced at the other 2 people. The shadow of the magic mirror was best to choose a person whose consciousness completely surrendered, and it was easiest to succeed. Although the evil god king was seriously injured, in order to completely turn him into a shadow, he needed to subdue his will. This was obviously difficult, and he was unwilling to get close to the evil god king who was still conscious. The evil god king was now much more powerful. He still has suppression on his soul. This is a restraint method that was buried in his soul from the beginning. It's the other Hydra. Although the comatose Hydra is not in surrender consciousness, it should be much easier for him to become conscious than the other 2. Although the god of light managed to reach the peak of his strength by swallowing the shadows, he still did not dare to confront the 3 peak powerhouses due to his previous impressions and psychological shadows. Even if he holds the magic mirror, he subconsciously thinks that he is still no match for the opponent. This feeling of fear in the heart is the absolute impression formed by the evil god king over many years. It cannot be eliminated in a short while. The god of light hesitated for a moment, then walked towards the angel stone statue. Standing in front of the stone platform, he reached out and grabbed all 3 black ancient badges into his hands. Without looking carefully, he just put it into his clothes. Then he made several leaps and landed next to the unconscious Garen. This is the first one, he. The god of light turned over his hand and took out the magic mirror. The shadow magic mirror was a black mirror the size of a wash basin. It was oval in shape with fine silver lace on the edge. Every once in a while, a subtle complex symbol was engraved on it, like some kind of the words are like some kind of pattern. There is a slightly purple round orb on the top of the mirror, with 3 diamond-shaped borders on the side. The strangest thing is that in the center of the mirror, in the middle of the mirror, which is as calm as a lake, there is a blurry human face. The face is only the size of a palm, with black eyes, mouth, and nostrils, as if it is crying or fearful. The god of light raised the magic mirror and looked at Garen on the ground. The face in the center of the mirror suddenly distorted, and invisible mysterious power instantly radiated from the facial features. The invisible light shined out, but where it fell, there was no trace of Galleon. Bang! A big hand stained with blood grabbed his hand holding the magic mirror from behind. Guangxin's expression froze, and Garen's ferocious face covered in blood appeared next to him. At this moment, his mind went blank, and a huge force tightly jammed his arm. This force was so powerful that it could not be used by a seriously injured person. Chirp! At this moment, he seemed to hear the scream of a giant bird. Instinctively, Guangshen punched Garen in the abdomen and kicked the opponent's injured knee joint with one leg. Garen flicked his right hand, shaking the God of Light to pieces, easily neutralizing all his attacks. The other left arm has already brought up a powerful wind, forming invisible airflow wings that stabbed into the abdomen of the God of Light. Wow! The God of Light suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his whole person began to turn into a ghost. His lower abdomen was directly pierced by Garen's left arm. The body is like a dying fish, hanging on a sharp harpoon and struggling. Is this the kind of thing that's picking up bargains behind our backs? Garen's right hand with the God of Light suddenly hit the ground. Boom! A pit several meters wide was created on the ground by the terrifying dual force of Xifeng Fist, which happened to be connected with a large pit on the side. The light god who was pierced through Garen's right hand could no longer be transformed into a ghost, and was restored to his body again by the huge shock. In this place without extraordinary power, he does not have the terrifying physical fitness of the three of them. He only has the same level of strength and speed. Although he is the original shadow of power, he has one more shadow than the three of them and his power is enhanced after being transformed. He had the advantage, but because using the magic mirror he could not use his shadow body, he was caught by Garen who was pretending to be stunned. He was severely injured in an instant and fell into a dying state. Trash with no power, realm, or skill, even 100 more will be trash. Garen sneered, pulled out his right hand from the light god's abdomen, scratched it with his nails, and suddenly pulled out a large piece of bright red flesh, which he threw it aside. The evil god king on the side also slowly hid a red needle in his mouth under his tongue. The green bloodshot eyes that spread slightly in the eyes of the heavenly god palace master also slowly faded away. With a crisp click, Garen tore off the head of the god of light with one hand and held it upside down in his hand. With his left hand, he put the magic mirror into his robe. However, after searching for a while, he could not find the intact pocket, so he could only use the hem of the robe is tied up and hung around the waist. Finally, he bent down and searched the body of the god of light. He found the 3 certificates just now. After distinguishing them for a while, he ejected the other 2. With 2 hisses, 2 vouchers fell on the ground beside the other 2 people. The magic mirror was brought to my mouth by itself. According to the agreement, it should belong to me, right? Garen chuckled. Don't forget our agreement, the evil god king suddenly said from the side. Garen nodded. Exchange later. Good. The lord of the heavenly god palace took a deep look at Garen. Although he was the master of the lair and not a human being, he could not tell at this time that the 2 people must have been aware of the light god's following before they acted. A good show. Sure enough, human beings are all cunning. He reaffirmed this understanding in his mind. He was the only one among the 3 who was kept in the dark and foolishly fought with the Black Tree Man. This time he was seriously injured and fell to the same level as the 2 of them. There is also the God of Light. Although he is indeed not strong, he still belongs to the 5th type. He has powerful secret martial arts and skills, but in the hands of Hydra, he is like a baby with no resistance. Obviously, the realm between the 2 is different. It's so big that one galleon can resist the 12 powers of the God of Light, which is simply crushing. The Lord of Tianshan Palace picked up the secret martial arts certificate and stood up without saying a word. In any case, it is finally safe now. Although the magic mirror can control the shadows, all the shadows have been killed at this time, and there is no more force to be deployed. All that is left now is to take out the agreed upon suits. The secret martial arts of one's own life. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 529. The Black Tree Man fell, and 3 round arched black doors slowly appeared on the wall of the church hall, as if black flames burned through the paper, and the edges of the black doors were filled with ashes intertwined with black and sparks. Garin glanced at the voucher in his hand and strode towards one of the doors without looking at the other two. Pass through the black gate and enter the same cliff, surrounded by an endless black abyss. The cliff is in a huge dark blue cave, and the wind is howling in the air, which is extremely cold. Standing on the edge of the cliff, Garin looked down and saw darkness below, with a vague black mist rolling in. He was the only one around, and there was a thick layer of transparent ice on the stone wall. He took a deep breath, stabilized his seriously injured body, took the ancient badge in his hand, stretched it out flatly, and then gave it a firm grip. The palm was suddenly cut slightly by the badge certificate, and the blood flowed along the palm of the hand, dripping directly into the black abyss below. The scarlet blood beads collided and rolled, falling into the bottomless abyss, and soon disappeared completely. As the blood dripped, Garin gently let go of the badge, letting the blood-stained badge slip from his hand, and then fell into the abyss. Call. At this moment, a little blue suddenly lit up in the depths of the abyss. The blue was only the size of a sesame dot at first, but in an instant, it expanded to the size of a fist. In another moment, the blue suddenly rushed into the abyss, and it was like a wave of countless ice blue cold air. A giant ice blue bird tens of meters tall fluttered out of the abyss, and instantly hovered in front of Garin. Its huge blue eyes stared calmly at Garin on the cliff. The giant bird has slender tail feathers, like the legendary divine bird phoenix, but it carries an unparalleled terrifying cold air instead of flames. Thicker and thicker layers of blue ice continued to condense on the surrounding cave walls, and the entire cave completely turned into a huge ice cave in just 10 seconds. Wisps of substantial white cold wind surrounded the giant bird and Garin, singing softly as if they were alive. It didn't sound like the sound of wind, but rather like some kind of rhythm. There is also a large amount of blue cold air rolling and spreading, and there are countless blue cold air similar to sea water lingering in the air. Garin raised his head and looked at the giant bird in front of him. The huge blue wings spread gently, protecting him from left to right like a sculpture. The giant bird slowly lowered its head, its long beak close to Garin and slightly opened. A ball of blue light rolled out of its mouth and floated just in front of Garin. The light spot contained a trace of extremely pure chill. Garin could feel it, not that his body actually felt cold, but just by looking at this light spot, he felt a slight chill in his heart. He stretched out his right hand and gently held the blue light spot. Feeling that the light point suddenly wanted to penetrate into his body, Garin did not resist at all. He relaxed his mind and saw the light point sneer from his palm and penetrated under the skin, disappearing completely. The giant bird in front of him slowly faded away at the moment when the light spot disappeared, and slowly disappeared like a bubble. Only the ice layer left on the cave wall on the ground showed that everything just now was not an illusion. Garin took a deep breath and carefully checked the movement on his side, but found nothing. He knew that he probably wouldn't feel anything for a while, and considering what the evil God King had warned him before, he simply turned around and walked towards the previous secret chamber church. Quickly returning to the church, he glanced at the other 2 black doors and walked directly towards one of them, where the scent of the evil God King remained. After passing through the black gate, I saw the evil God King struggling to stand on the edge of the cliff, obviously waiting for him. Garin casually threw the head of the God of Light that he had been holding in the direction of the evil God King. The head rolled and landed at the evil God King's feet, but the evil God King didn't even look at it. How could the 3 men, who were such powerful figures in the world, take such an overestimating character in their eyes? In the final analysis, Light God's final self-righteous plan and conspiracy would have had no hope of success even if it had not been against Garin but someone else. Just because there is no threat, there is no attention, let alone respect and hatred. I'm just waiting for you. The evil God King's appearance was even more miserable than Garin's. Although the blood stopped flowing all over his body, the wounds and holes of different sizes were still clearly visible. If he glanced over, there were more than 10 wounds. In addition, his face was pale, obviously caused by excessive blood loss, but now he was still able to stand up with his own strength and perseverance. Being able to succeed as the evil God King was not an easy role. Garen nodded at it, strode over, took off the tied magic mirror, and threw it directly. The evil God King also directly threw his certificate over. The two objects passed by each other in mid-air and fell into the hands of two people respectively. Grabbing the certificate with a snap, Garen strode to the edge of the cliff and looked back at the evil God King. The latter smiled and consciously stepped back a long distance. Garen then held the certificate again and exerted slight force, and drops of blood immediately fell into the abyss. Then let go of the voucher and let it fall. After a while, the abyss once again lit up with a red dot. The red dots made a violent whirring sound, like the noise of a fire blown by strong winds. The entire abyss suddenly lit up, and a large dazzling red light became brighter and brighter, getting closer and closer. In an instant, countless red flames spurted out from the abyss like a sea of flames, and the entire cave was completely illuminated in fiery red. In the middle of the flames, a huge humanoid figure over 50 meters fluttered towards him. The human form is covered in red bone armor, with bat wings on its back. Every time it spreads its wings, it brings out countless fire streams. In just a few seconds, the red-armored figure rushed out of the abyss and floated in front of Garen, looking down slightly. This humanoid shape is astonishingly like a legendary demon, with a human-like body, black bat wings, and a long spiked black tail circling slightly behind it. It was covered in bone armor that was as hot as a red-hot iron, and had a pair of curly black horns on its head. What impressed Garen most was the countless fine and delicate runes engraved on its body armor, as well as the black relief of a suffering figure in the middle of its chest. The humanoid's arms were spread out and tied to the demon's chest like a cross. There was endless black smoke in his eyes, and he was still wailing in a low voice. At this moment, the demon's long tail covered with spikes swung slightly, winding around Garen like a snake. "Be careful. This is the backlash of the power of the secret martial arts of life." The evil God King's expression changed behind him and he shouted quickly. "Backlash? It seems that this secret martial art should be a type like the Gate Demon Kung Fu." Garen's expression remained unchanged. "Let the long tail wrap around you." The countless scale-like spikes on the long tail are stacked on top of each other to form a large number of barbs, which can remove large areas of flesh and blood with just a single swipe. The thick long tail almost completely submerged Garen into it, and no one could be seen. Garen's eyes suddenly turned pitch black. Standing surrounded by giant tails, he suddenly opened his arms. Chirp! A shrill scream of a giant bird sounded out of thin air. Countless air currents gathered and flowed behind him, forming a pair of huge transparent wings tens of meters long, which flapped gently. Plop! Plop! Waves of strong and huge vibrations continued to center on Galen, spreading and beating in all directions, like the pulse and heartbeat of the earth. The iceborne secret weapon that had just been absorbed quickly took root in Garen's body. From his lower abdomen, dense blue roots of light sprouted, spreading to every corner of Garen's body. The most eye-catching thing among them is the dragon heart on Garen's chest. Countless blue silk threads wrap around the heart. Blue and red are intertwined to form a blue cocoon that is constantly beating. The huge red demon stepped back a distance, put his right hand on his chest, retracted his giant tail, and bowed slightly towards Garen. He actually lowered his head and smiled in salute like a noble. Boom! The demon suddenly dispersed and turned into countless streams of dark red flames, spraying and swimming in all directions, filling the entire cave in an instant. The evil God King was also forced to retreat into the Black Gate, looking far away at Galen in the center of the flame flow, which was the only empty space in the cave without flames. Garen stood on the edge of the cliff, with a black and red cross sword thrust upside down in front of him. In the middle of the sword, there is a relief sculpture in the shape of a suffering human being, which is exactly the same as the relief on the devil just now. The eyes of the relief are constantly exuding black air, flowing down the black and red sword body, spreading from the ground, like an icy cold air, falling heavily. Garen suddenly reached out his hand and gently grasped the hilt of the cross sword. Laugh! The sword guard suddenly opened a pair of black metal wings, and the wings reflected a faint black light, layered on top of each other, as if they were made of countless metal wings intertwined. As Galleon tightened his grip, countless fine regular lines suddenly appeared on the sword hilt. The countless lines were like entangled black snakes, densely packed, forming strange non-slip lines. The moment he grasped the hilt of the sword, Garen's originally pitch-black eyes slowly emitted two streaks of black energy just like the suffering figure. Clang! The black and red cross sword was suddenly pulled out and stood in front of Garen. The smooth mirror-like part of the sword clearly reflected his face at this time. The eyes with black smoke gushing out were like the suffering figure on the demon's chest just now. Garen sneered. Hold the cross sword tightly and raise it upward. Call. Countless red fire streams in the cave instantly formed a huge flame vortex, as if all streams had returned to their origin, and quickly converged towards the sword body. Streams of fire and fire snakes rushed into the sword one after another. Within 10 seconds, the entire cave was completely cleared, leaving no trace of fire. The black and red cross sword also disappeared silently, slowly fading into transparency, and finally completely disappeared from Garen's hands. Garen's dark eyes slowly returned to their original state at this time. The cave suddenly fell into complete silence, as if the scene of surging flames just now was just an illusion. Congratulations to Palace Master Jialong, for getting 2 copies of the secret martial arts of life, the evil God King said loudly with a smile behind him. This man is quite capable of bending and stretching, and he has the courage to do whatever it takes to achieve his goals. From the arrogance at the beginning, to the rage and helplessness later, he finally corrected his attitude after facing it, and even ignored the past grievances for the greater benefit and invited Garen to join, so as to prevent the Lord of the Heavenly Palace from gaining too much momentum and occupying the majority. Garen turned around, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. I remember you said that when the secret weapon of life is obtained, it will often form various strange illusions. To a certain extent, these illusions are phantoms formed by the breath of the unconscious secret weapon. But what happened to that just now? The evil God King also saw the huge demon take the initiative to let go of the backlash just now, but instead bowed to Garen and retreated with a smile. His eyes flickered, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Perhaps there is something powerful in your body that even the secret weapon of life cannot resist. He lowered his voice slightly and answered in a low voice. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 530. Garen took a deep look at him. The black and red cross sword was actually the manifestation of the secret weapon of life from the devil. At this moment, the 2 secret martial arts seemed to be slowly merging within his body, creating a strange and special reaction with his own black water true skill. The secret martial arts of life, especially the secret martial arts that the evil God King took the initiative to give himself, which was suitable for him, definitely had something special that he didn't know about. Seeing Garen's downcast expression, the evil God King chuckled softly and coughed heavily against the black door. I'm not lying to you. This disciple's secret weapon is indeed genuine. It just has some minor side effects. Garen narrowed his eyes slightly and was about to speak when he saw the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace slowly walking out behind the evil God King. What he originally wanted to say suddenly stopped in his mouth. The Lord of Tianshan Palace glanced at the 2 of them, walked to the middle of the cliff, sat directly on the ground, and rested against a protruding rock. The 3 of them occupied 3 positions in the front, middle, and back of the cliff, and none of them spoke. Every sect of the secret martial arts of life is an extremely mysterious and powerful existence. If you find the secret martial arts of life that suits you, once you reach the level of cultivation, you will be able to break through the peak of the 5 forms like the ghost sect, enter the 6th form, and reach an unprecedented level. Levels of horror. No one would think too much of me for such a treasure. At this time, Ennet, the main city of the imperial capital, was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the ruins. The huge rock city is like a white dragon entrenched on the Khaki highlands. White Ennite flags were flying everywhere in the city, and the flag with the red cross on a white background was torn by the wind. In the early morning, among the large green fields and farms scattered outside the city, groups of people in various costumes rushed towards Rock City under the watchful eyes of farmers and women. Like thin lines of different colors, flowing into the city from all directions. On the high walls of the city, groups of totem masters in white were patrolling back and forth. A double-headed white eagle was constantly hovering over the city, occasionally emitting a clear roar. Several huge white hot air balloons were suspended in the sky, and someone in the hanging basket below was scattering fluffy fresh pink petals, forming a shower of petals falling down. Among the people and horses heading to Panchi City, some rode tall horses and various exotic beasts, and some went on foot, all covered in armor and showing kindness. There were even more teams riding on carriages pulled by birds and animals that were moving forward quickly. On both sides of the hundreds-meter-high white stone gate of Panchi City, there stands a 100-meter-high white giant stone statue, holding a sword in one hand and a shield in the other. Wearing armor on the head, no face can be seen. From time to time, people stop to watch at the foot of the giant stone statue. At the city gate, there is a constant flow of people, carriages, and horses. There are vendors carrying fruits and vegetables, foreign totem masters carrying weapons, swords, and shields, rangers and hunters carrying longbows and quivers, and even a few people wearing black silk clothes can be seen. Strong men, these men in black silk clothes have a simplified pattern of 2 dragon-shaped heads on their chests. They are clearly the children of Kurosawa Palace from Kuwaitan. What are these Hydra's disciples doing here? Do they also want to participate in this World Totem King Conference? On the left side of the White Avenue entering the city, an old damaged carriage with black silver trim was slowly approaching. There were several black armored guards accompanying the carriage. One of the young guards glanced at the children of Kurosawa Palace and said, he couldn't help but mumble, Hydra. The curtains of the carriage were slowly lifted, revealing the face of a man with an incomprehensible expression. In recent times, since the death of pharaohs in the battle, many of his descendants have been wiped out, leaving only one eldest son who hid properly and escaped with his life. These descendants of Kurosawa Palace should be traveling, so don't worry about them. Even if the Kurosawa Palace Hydra comes in person, can it be more powerful than pharaohs? Another female voice came from the carriage, and her voice was faintly refreshing. It was obvious that the owner was a person with a cheerful personality. Coming out of the ground, I haven't seen such a bright sky for a long time. The woman lifted the curtain on the other side, revealing her charming and beautiful white face, looking up at the sky, with a trace of relief in her bright yellow eyes. The president has mobilized all the combat forces in the club this time, and also brought the 2 of us out from the underground. It seems that he is really planning to fight, the man said in a low voice. This is definitely true, but how to start requires planning. Pharaoh's last battle also caused the president to suffer some minor injuries. Unexpectedly, the king of Genia was about to break through that limit. If he was given a few more in the next year, it may actually become our formidable enemy. Fortunately, the president made a quick decision and took action before he completely became a hidden danger. The man nodded in agreement. The people from Tianshan Palace have gathered a large number of people in the south, and the old guy still doesn't seem to give up. The woman shook her head and stopped talking. The man sighed. After we deal with King Ennet here, it will be time for our Black Sky Society to unify the 2 continents of the East and West. But for some reason, now I can no longer see through the president's thoughts. When we followed him and became independent, after so many years of wandering around, I really don't know if the original agreement still stands up to now. Maybe the president has forgotten it, the woman interjected at this time. Her voice was very soft, but it revealed a trace of anxiety and worry. Give me the order, separate a few people to follow the people from Kurosawa Palace, and find an opportunity to deal with it, the man ordered. Yes, a woman guarding the side lowered her head to accept the order, picked 2 people out of the convoy, and followed the people from Kurosawa Palace. Even if it's to collect some interest for Shinaun and the others, the man whispered. Just when the people from Black Sky Society quietly entered the city, a cloaked man in black robes slowly walked along the avenue and entered the city from another gate of Rock City. Amidst the noisy noise, he squeezed his way out of the crowd silently, and the man in black robe walked to a pool in the city, raised his head and looked towards the center of the city. There is a huge golden statue of the god of war, more than 300 meters tall, shining in the morning light. The god of war holds a spear, bends his right knee, and bows in a throwing posture. He is only wrapped in a golden gauze. He has a thick beard on his face and a simple snake ring belt around his waist. The man in black robe looked at the golden statue of the god of war, and a smile suddenly appeared on his bare face under the hood. The face was glowing with a strange metallic gray color, as if it was not alive and had no trace of blood. Eternal Night Palace. At this moment, directly under the statue of the god of war, there was the deepest part of the huge underground palace, hundreds of meters deep. A heavily armored figure sitting on a high throne suddenly raised his head, and a pair of white eyes slowly lit up in the darkness in the helmet. Click. The heavily armored figure slowly grasped the armrest of the throne. Ghost Gate. You are finally here. A cold female voice sounded from under the armor. Within the ruins, Garen sat cross-legged on the edge of the cliff, staring at the other 2 people quietly without saying a word. The other 2 people stood, one sat, and neither of them spoke at all. The 3 of them all got what they wanted at this time, but as temporary collaborators, each of them had their own thoughts. Even those who had no ambitions were worried about whether there was something fishy between the other 2. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace is very likely to have an idea and want to see if there is a chance to seize what the other 2 have. Whether it is the secret martial arts of life or the magic mirror, neither can be completely mastered and digested in a short period of time. They both require a long period of integration and understanding. As the master of the lair, if he can kill the 2 of them directly here, then the masters of the lair will have to face 2 less powerful enemies in the future. After all, such a peak powerhouse is not a cabbage, and he can suddenly attack it at any time. Pop up. But if one person has to deal with 2 people, he thinks that his current state is a bit weak, but dealing with one person should be no problem. As an inhuman, his physique recovers very quickly. The period just now was enough for him to recover some of his remaining strength. Garen naturally saw what he meant. He was afraid and did not rush to take action. He just held back. He was confident that his recovery speed would not be slower than that of the opponent, and he was not in a hurry. If he originally had the peak strength of Type 5 before entering the ruins, then now, after mastering the dual skills, he can still get a glimpse of the secret martial arts of life. There has been a strong increase in strength. Although it does not break through the limit, it is almost the same as a veteran powerhouse like the evil God King in such an environment that is isolated from extraordinary power. At this time, facing the persecution of the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace, he was not in a hurry. He just sat cross-legged on the ground to see what the other party's plan was. The evil God King's eyes flickered, and his heart was a little wavering. From the look on his face, it was inevitable that he was not planning to get an advantage after the 2 of them fought. This is also the key to making the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace fearful. The 3 of them now had a delicate balance, and no one dared to make the first move. Originally, The evil god king had not had this thought, but when he saw the demonic vision just now, he suddenly had other thoughts in his mind. The lord of the heavenly god palace looked at the calm-looking Garen. After being silent for a while, his eyes slightly drifted in the direction of the evil god king. Apparently, when he couldn't find an opportunity, he decided to change his target. Even he, the master of the lair, had vague hints of the evil god king's intentions. Master Tianshan Palace, the three of us have gained a lot in this ruins this time, but we are all seriously injured. It is better to go back to rest first, and then consider other things after the injuries are completely recovered. What do you think? Garen suddenly spoke. He keenly saw that the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace's intention was transferred to the evil God King, and he spoke decisively at this time, saying that he did not intend to wade into the muddy waters now, and just wanted to go home to recuperate and recover from his injuries. If you want to kill the evil God King, you can wait until I leave before doing it. I will never interfere. Human beings are all cunning and deceitful. I don't believe you. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace shook his head slightly. It would be really dangerous if Garen pretended to retreat, hide, and then come out after they were both injured. Then it would be better if you retreated on your own initiative, rather than everyone else not being able to recover. Garen then revealed his true intention. The underlying meaning is that you can't get it anyway, so if you are worried about this or that, you might as well not take action at all. However, the Lord of Tianshan Palace kept silent and stopped talking, obviously intending to waste time with the two of them. Garen and the evil God King looked at each other, and both saw a hint of cruelty in the other's eyes. Both of them saw that the other had a hint of intention to join forces to kill the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace. The atmosphere in the cave gradually began to become tense. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 531. The atmosphere became more and more solemn, and Garen evil God King faintly moved his position to form a straight line with the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace in the middle. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace slowly rolled his eyes, and the dark green longbow on his back was slightly emerald green. He looked at the expressions and movements of the two people in front of him and his heart sank slightly. In this case, it's better to end today's matter. It's best if the palace master thinks so. The evil God King chuckled and made way for him. His mouth shape is a bit weird, and the red needle hidden under his tongue puts him in a state where he can spray attacks instantly at any time. The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace nodded. After all, he still did not use the longbow that he had never used before. He stood up slowly. His figure turned into a shadow and passed by the evil God King in an instant, disappearing without a trace. Suddenly, only the evil God King and Garen were left on the cliff. Together, the evil God King asked in a low voice. Certainly. Garen nodded. Although the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace has left, it is only on the surface. If he is still hiding somewhere waiting for an opportunity, it would be the greatest stupidity to separate at this time. The two of them together, because they were afraid of the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace who might be hiding in the dark, did not cause any trouble. They followed the crack where they fell, and every time they jumped up, they instantly pierced the stone wall with their arms and hung themselves. Then he used his strength to jump upward again. This happened again and again, and soon, the two of them returned to the second-level fork where they initially entered the third level. The fork in the road was still filled with a faint blue mist. Two figures suddenly jumped up from the cave on the ground and landed gently on the edge of the cave. They were two figures, one black and one red. The black man is Garen with an indifferent expression, his blonde hair shawl hanging down, and his dark magic eyes showing no signs of fading away. His black water true skill is obviously at its peak at any time. Hong Ying was the evil God King who had suffered heavy injuries and blood holes all over his body. He looked defeated and was breathing heavily. It seems that I have to rest for a while when I go back this time. Firoz is dead. Now that the situation has changed, do you still have time to rest? Garen raised his eyebrows slightly. Now we can no longer follow the original historical trajectory. History has been greatly changed by him, and everything is in chaos. It is true that Gaiman suffered serious injuries after defeating pharaohs, but after the Battle of Shanya's national destiny, Ennet was indifferent, and it was obvious that he had other plans. King Ennet and Philos are two different extremes. She is crazy and courageous. More importantly, she does not follow any established rules and is also a top totem master. Compared to pharaohs, he became famous hundreds of years ago. He is a peak powerhouse with a long-standing reputation among the older generation. I don't know how strong his headquarters is. This was another shocking collision. It's a pity. If Pharaohs was willing to join forces with me, how could we end up like this? The evil god king shook his head and said with regret. Garin did not speak, but focused on checking the traces left by the lord of the heavenly god palace around him. The evil god king glanced at him. This time, both you and I have gained a lot. I wonder what Palace Master Jialong has planned in the future. Plan? Don't you already know what I'm going to do? Garin was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. The aftermath of the secret martial arts was almost unbearable. He moved his feet and turned into a phantom, rushing towards the passage from which he came. The evil god king chuckled and received and fused the secret martial art seeds of 2 lives in a short period of time. Especially the portion he gave up was not so easy to absorb. But the two agreed to exchange, and neither of them had any intention of going back on their word. Apparently Garin also benefited from that secret martial arts. Garin was in front, and he was behind. The two of them focused on their journey for a while, and neither of them spoke again. At this time, the green and black-red threads in Garin's body were intertwined, as if countless slender insects were burrowing inside his body, and the pain was unbearable. Fortunately, his peak black water true skill, which originated from the world of secret martial arts, is slowly becoming a buffer zone between the two kinds of secret martial arts, making the conflict between the two less acute and giving him some time to relax. The first secret weapon of life obtained was of ice attribute. The second part seems to be of the flame system, but in fact it is of the metal system. The flame demon represents the smelting of metal. The black and red sword that appears at the end is the real seed. The two secret martial arts seeds are added together. The entanglement and conflict in Long's body formed 2 balls, one green and one black, which started to rotate. The center of rotation is the core where the energy, blood, and fusion power of the black water true skill that Garin has practiced for a long time are condensed. But at this time, the black water true skill is being consumed at a high speed. Every extra second it stays will consume an additional portion of the fusion power of the black water true skill. Garin was anxious and his feet were getting faster and faster. Boom! The stone door of the ruins was suddenly broken open, and a black shadow shot out, flew into the dense woods on the right, and landed in a small open space. There was a carriage pulled by a black hawk parked in the open space, and a bonfire was burning beside the carriage. The 2 girls, Demon Phoenix and Phantom, were sitting by the fire, flipping through books. When they heard the sound, they both stood up in unison, and turned around to see Gary. Long appeared beside the carriage. Palace Master. Leave here immediately, Garin said without saying a word, got into the carriage, sat cross-legged on the ground, and fell into a state of self-study. There were beads of sweat on his forehead, forcing himself to endure the tremendous pain. Demon Phoenix and Phantom quickly put out the bonfire, got on the carriage, and pulled the reins hard. The black hawk that was still resting suddenly fluttered its wings and flew into the air. The huge pulling force shook the carriage violently, and then it suddenly jumped into the air. The magic cloud aura that Garin asked Mo Phoenix to prepare was of no use this time. It was used to prevent the other 2 from setting up a siege trap. The magic cloud aura was best suited to converting hostile forces into one's own. It is most effective against group battles. As for the peak power, with the 5-type Demon Phoenix present, and the extraordinary power that Garen has now recovered. Even if he doesn't take action, he can still release an extremely poisonous and terrifying corrosive aura. Because of the combination with Chi, his aura is now a powerful killing weapon. Combined with Moyun's aura, it forms a powerful mode of kill transform kill again. Fortunately, the other two people did not set any other traps. If Garen had not been affected by the sequelae of the secret martial arts of life, he might have had the opportunity to rob and kill the other two people this time. Unfortunately, he could not protect himself now. The black carriage quickly drew a black line in the midday sky, and soon disappeared into the sky. On the other side of the sky, a bloody mask slowly appeared, and then quickly disappeared. Also disappearing at the same time was the figure of the evil God King. It wasn't until both of them left completely that the figure of the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace slowly emerged from the air outside the ruins gate, as if he had been invisible from the beginning, and the other two people didn't notice it at all. Looking in the direction of the two people leaving, he touched the end of the long bow protruding from his waist. A trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. After a moment, he finally released his fingers and turned around to walk in the other direction of the woods. Inside the Black Hawk carriage, Garen closed his eyes tightly and bit his lower lip with his teeth. A trace of blood dripped down his chin, but he didn't feel it at all. Wisps of black energy emanated from under him, silently, condensing the wooden floor into a thin layer of ice. He is using his mind to fit in with the vitality between the conflict between the two secret martial arts. Blackwater's real skill is constantly being absorbed and fused by the two secret martial arts in the buffer, absorbing some of the secret martial arts memories and will that suit him, and then forming a newer one. A bigger and stronger conflict. The core of the Blackwater true skill is getting smaller and smaller and weaker and weaker. If this continues, waiting for the core to be completely absorbed, all of Garen's true skills will be scrapped, becoming the conflicting nourishment between the two secret martial arts of life. After the conflict escalated, there was no room for buffering. It only took one collision to kill him instantly, without any luck. Garen worked hard to slow down the consumption of Blackwater's true power, looking for a suitable rate between buffering and absorption speed. No. If you continue like this, sooner or later you will be sucked dry by the two secret weapons of life. His thoughts were running at high speed at this time. It took him so long to reach this level. If he was knocked back to his original form because of this accident, this was not the purpose of coming to the ruins. Stretching out his hand and spreading his palms, fine black smoke was constantly rising from the 5 fingers of his palm. The black smoke was like a living thing, erasing and absorbing all traces of impurities on his body. The useful ones were fused away, and the useless ones were all absorbed. Force out the body. From the war shackles on Garen's arms, the initial eye that was originally added was extracted and merged into the black smoke. There are also black flowers with ice aura that are melted and absorbed into the black smoke, becoming nutrients that temporarily buffer the two living secret weapons. Only when absorbing nutrients, these two seeds will slow down the number of conflicts, so although he knew that it was drinking poison to quench his thirst, Garen had to do this. This is better than having the foundation of your true Blackwater skill destroyed alive. After the Eye of Beginning was pulled in, the two seeds suddenly paused and were divided in half, which greatly slowed down the speed of the conflict. After Black Flower joined, it alone slowed down the rotation speed of the ice seeds. In this way, what might have been a fatal explosion in less than a day was delayed to at least a week. These two secret martial arts seeds are like greedy giant beasts, constantly absorbing structures and energy of the same kind that they do not have, and try their best to improve and evolve themselves. At the same time, on the way to perfection, they will also release spiritual energy to improve their bodies. If there is only one kind, it will be the perfect improvement. Galen's physique makes it possible to reach further levels. But having two auras would be bad. The two auras are in conflict with each other. You want to change it this way, and he wants to change it that way. No one will let the other. In the end, the one who was pulled and painful in the middle was Garen himself. He knew that he was careless this time. He didn't expect that the secret weapon of life could be such a domineering thing, and he also had his own instincts. However, before the contact, no one knew that the merger of the two secret weapons of life would produce such a terrifying collision. There is still a way. Garen's eyes flickered. As long as the two secret martial arts are thoroughly blended, the areas where they conflict are completely rounded and not so sharp, and the two secret martial arts can become one by finding commonalities. Transform all power for my use. Only then can we truly get the inheritance information of the secret martial arts of life. Now, because of the secret martial arts confrontation, he actually didn't really get the secret martial arts training methods and secret martial arts information at all. In this case, the required conditions are: his mind was spinning at high speed, and the large amount of knowledge systems accumulated in the past were being unearthed one by one at this time. Different systems tried to build models, failed and collapsed again and again, and restarted again and again. Try to build. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 532. Time passed by minute by minute. The true power of black water is also being constantly consumed. The innate ability of nine-headed dragon has been completely destroyed and decomposed by life. It is directly eliminated as impurities by the two secret martial arts seeds. This means that Garen will completely lose life and be swallowed. This ability. He has always relied on this ability to kill countless enemies and resolve many dangers. However, at this time, he could only watch as this ability quickly turned into black smoke and dissipated as the black water true skill degraded. This is just the beginning. The next step is that the huge regenerative power of the nine-headed dragon begins to be slowly decomposed and dissipated. Garen knew that if no solution could be found, the Dragon Roar ability, corrupting poisonous mist, and Dragon Demon parasitism would be torn apart one by one. The Black Water True skill has long been integrated with its own nine-headed dragon gene and core totem. Once it is completely decomposed, Garen will be completely downgraded to the level of a preparatory totem master without even a totem except for a dragon heart. One solution after another, one operation and coordination model after another are constantly being built and destroyed. Galen's intelligence attribute reaching 12 points is fully turning at this moment. If it were an ordinary totem master, there would be no way at all. Even the top totem master would not be able to do it. It is impossible to establish a model to simulate the development of logical states at such a high speed. The powerful nerve cells allowed Galen to even use dual techniques, trying to build two different models at the same time, doubling his speed instantly. I don't know how long it took, but the carriage shook with a crash and seemed to hit the ground. Garen opened his bloodshot eyes, stood up and opened the car curtain. Welcome Palace Master. In the central square of Kurosawa Palace, hundreds of palace guards and management staff were divided into two rows to greet him. Konkin and Blizzard walked towards him together, but as soon as they saw Garen getting out of the car, their expressions changed slightly and they stopped. Konkin even took 2 steps back. At this moment, Garen's body was filled with countless dark smoke, like countless black threads with teeth and claws. The moment his feet stepped on the white stone slabs of the square, a small layer of black ice condensed on the ground. Seeing the frightened and confused expressions on the two men's faces, Garen had no intention of explaining and said in a hoarse voice, "Take me to the Nine Snakes system. I'll notify the technical palace." Blizzard heard that the matter was urgent, and immediately turned into a cloud of snow powder and disappeared in place. Kongqin quickly took out several bottles of fiery red potion from his body and sprinkled it directly on Garen. Puff! As soon as the black smoke and the red potion came into contact, clouds of white gas burst out. I can only temporarily suppress your poisonous energy from spreading, Kong Qin said seriously. I know. Garen strode towards the inner hall and directly to the core control side hall of the Nine Snakes system. This kind of black smoke is the highly toxic smoke produced by the continuous dispersion of Blackwater's true power. If you are not careful, it will hurt innocent people. Kong Qin also saw this and took decisive action. The two of them, Mohuang, came down from the carriage with a dark complexion. They were obviously poisoned slightly, and they were a little shaky when they got out of the carriage. Kong Qin quickly went over and gave the two of them the antidote potion. At this time, the several black eagles pulling the cart finally screamed, fell to the ground, and slowly melted into pools of black water. Garen walked towards the core of Nine Snakes step by step. Every step he took left a deep black air footprint under his feet, and countless black smoke escaped from his body like tentacles of shadow. The dissipation of Blackwater's true power also caused unparalleled pain to him. It was a terrifying pain that could be compared to countless saws cutting and tearing at the flesh and blood of his body. Even Garen, who had strong willpower, was in so much pain that he could hardly walk steadily. Every step he took seemed heavy and slow, and he even staggered a little, as if he was dragging extremely heavy shackles behind him. Some of the potted flowers and plants around him withered and turned black the moment he passed by, and then melted into a puddle of black water. The surface of some stone furniture is covered with a thin layer of black ice. Some maids and guards who passed by avoided him and were directly condensed into slightly black ice sculptures. Some of them still maintained their movements of saluting. Garen could faintly hear the piercing screams of terror, the chaotic running footsteps, and the clatter of delicate porcelain being broken in the palace. By the time they reached the side hall controlled by Nine Snakes, many left behind elders had already gathered in the side hall. The image of Nine Snakes had already condensed and bowed slightly towards Garen. Seeing Garen's situation at this time, both the elders of the Seven Knights Tower and the elders of the Island Masters line looked extremely solemn. Master Kilian from the Technology Hall looked even more nervous. Are you spreading your kung fu? He recognized Garen's current state at a glance. The other elders were immediately shocked. Garen, as the core of Kurosawa Palace, actually went out on his own to spread his energy this time. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. You saw it. Garen forced a smile. At this time, he had almost combined the knowledge systems of his three worlds to find a barely feasible method. Nine Snakes, Master Kilian, I need an environment with enough pressure, water, and extremely low temperature. Please do it as soon as possible. Nine Snakes contains all the maps that can be purchased in the entire world, and Master Kilian, as the top master of totems, may have a solution. The current situation is that the speed of dissipation must be slowed down immediately. Kong Qin, as the same technician, has the most say. Be alert to the outside world immediately. The shining water has a certain buffering effect. Get the nearest stock immediately. Hurry. Master Kilian immediately found a way to delay. The best location has been found. The image of Nine Snakes sounded at this time. There are 3 locations for reference. The first is the Mears Valley wind outlet. The huge wind pressure there can provide strong pressure conditions. The strong winds take away any excess heat and also produce extremely low temperatures. There is a patch of wind in the valley. It's a small lake that meets the water conditions. The second one, the northern polar ocean abyss, the deep sea area of extremely cold environment, pressure, low temperature, and water sources can all be satisfied. The third one, Mora Snow Cave, the lair of a lair lord in the north. It is filled with a liquid pool of extremely cold ice liquid. The extremely cold ice liquid in it is hundreds of times heavier than mercury. Sneak deep into it, and it meets the conditions very well. Garen pondered for a moment and quickly selected the best place in his mind. Go to Bihai. The entire Kurosawa Palace was in a panic, and under the anxious attention of countless guards and maids, Garen was escorted by several elders and demon phoenixes, got into the huge flying eagle carriage, and sped towards the North Sea. All forces in Kurosawa Palace have suspended all activities, suspended all plans, and gathered their strength to wait for news. As for the other three giants in the imperial capital, the two giants had already taken people to join in the fun at the Enetyong Night Palace. The power of the remaining eldest princess is actively connected with Hongyu. She is building tall black spears in her own mountain area. I don't know what their purpose is. Kurosawa Palace has always been too lazy to participate in their struggles for power and various conspiracies. At this time, other forces did not pay much attention to this action. In their opinion, Garen is purely a seeker seeking the peak. As long as you don't mess with him, there is no harm at all. Quietly, Garen quietly left Kurosawa Palace, left absolute shelter, and flew towards the North Sea Polar Circle. A few days later, the deep waters of the Arctic Ocean. A black flying eagle carriage flew from a distance and slowly hovered on the sea. Suddenly, a black shadow jumped out from the carriage and plunged into the rolling blue sea like a sharp arrow. Bang! The sea water mixed with broken ice splashed with white waves, and then calmed down. All around is blue. Garen plunged into the sea water, turned over, and looked towards the sea surface. A series of bubbles were like transparent pearls, floating up from him in one piece. His eyes, ears, nose, and mouth were all filled with cold sea water, and a clear feeling of suffocation came to his heart. The white light is transmitted from the sea surface, hazy, making the blue water separate into different layers. Countless black smoke floated out from Garen's body, and he looked at the light above his head, slowly sinking towards the depths of the dark seabed. The light is getting farther and farther, and getting dimmer. The surroundings are getting colder and darker. Garen opened his eyes wide and looked at the only light above his head. He didn't know how long he had been sinking at this time. Countless black smoke blended into the surrounding sea water, and a group of small whitebaits passed by him. They had just swam a short distance before they floated up one by one with their bellies turned over, lifeless. There was an endless abyss of bottomless ocean beneath him. Garen turned over and with a slight stroke of his arm, he dived like an arrow towards the dark abyss of the abyss. Gradually, the surrounding became dark without any light. At this time, Garen already felt that the sand gong on his body had slowed down slightly. The huge sea pressure replaced the black water true kung fu and became the nutrient for the metal secret martial arts, while the extremely cold low temperature became the corresponding nutrient for the ice secret martial arts. Both of which greatly reduce the decomposition speed of black water true skill. But this decomposition still did not stop, and Garen continued to dive deeper without any hesitation. A huge disc-shaped transparent jellyfish suddenly swam over from a distance. The jellyfish's whole body was glowing with a faint blue light, and it was clearly visible in the darkness like a light bulb. It seemed to have discovered the galleon that was sneaking in. It adjusted its direction with its fine tentacles and was about to stab the galleon. But in an instant, its body froze slightly, and the light on its body suddenly dimmed, and soon disappeared completely. The light melted into a ball of ink-like venom, which was slowly diluted and dispersed by the sea water. I don't know how deep the depth here is, but the huge sea pressure around it makes even galleons feel a little tired. Generally, if a totem master of type 4 or below enters here, he will be completely crushed in an instant. Although the light of the totem can filter the oxygen in the seawater, it cannot withstand such terrifying seawater pressure. This is the largest ocean abyss trench in the Arctic ice sea. Galen cannot see what the bottom is like. There is no light at all. He just groped around on the side of the trench, dug out a large cave on the upright stone wall, and hid himself in it. Sitting cross-legged in the cave, under such pressure, Garen's signs of dissipation have greatly eased. But unfortunately, all that is left of his black water true skill is the last parasitic dragon demon. What is being decomposed at this time is his core powerful ability, 9 lives. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 533. Without the 9 life talent, Garen lost his biggest advantage against the strongest. Therefore, he must find a way to completely solve the sequelae of the 2 living secret martial arts under the environment of slowing down the decomposition. Closing his eyes, Garen was not worried about breathing problems at all. After his physique was genetically modified by the 9-headed dragon, he entered the 5th type and had the ability similar to the light of the totem. Absorbing oxygen from the sea water is just a small trick. This is also the power of the totem. One of the most basic abilities of light. The moment he closed his eyes, a large cloud of dense black mist rose from his body and spread in all directions. For several hundred meters with Galen as the center, the surrounding sea water gradually slowed down, and condensation appeared faintly. Countless deep-sea creatures fled away and swam towards the distant sea as if they were fleeing. At this moment, an inexplicable resonance signal was transmitted from Garen's body to the hovering carriage on the sea. Soon, more than a dozen dark blue sea eagle giant birds flew from the sky. On the back of the giant bird were white-clothed totem masters with strong and dignified auras. They wore white fur coats with a blue symbol representing the number 7. Among them, Blizzard, Tianu, and Ammonian are among them. Tower owners of the 7 Knights Tower, we are in trouble. Ephesus's voice came from the black carriage. We are both collaborators. This small matter is still the request of the palace master. Naturally we dare not neglect it. The big tower master is a thin old man with a white beard. Hearing this, he quickly answered humbly. Someone will deliver food every day. It will take some time to establish a direct channel. It doesn't matter, Ephesus responded, just please build a settlement as soon as possible so that it can be convenient for Konkin and I to move in. This is natural, the great tower master replied with respect. From the moment the black carriage arrived in the north, he sensed the terrifying power fluctuations in it. It was a huge aura that truly surpassed the secret treasure in his hand. He did not dare to neglect and immediately summoned all the tower owners to greet him. It wasn't until he saw that Lord Jialong went deep into the seabed and really came to meditate that he breathed a sigh of relief. Among the few people who came, Ephesus and another elder named Phantom were top powerhouses at the same level as him. Ephesus' aura was even in a state of breakthrough at any time. But the other demon phoenix couldn't see the bottom at all. Facing her was like facing a bottomless abyss, and such a strong man was actually just a subordinate of Lord Jialong. After discovering this, the great tower master thought about the good relationship between 7 Knights Tower and Kurosawa Palace, and his heart suddenly became hot. From today onwards, this sea area will be treated as the Kurosawa Palace sea area alone, and we will be responsible for sending people to guard and protect it, the tower master replied seriously. That's not necessary. The palace master needs to keep it as secret as possible. There is no need for anyone to guard this place. The 2 of us are enough, Ephesus said in a deep voice. Should we keep it as secret as possible? The great tower master nodded with understanding. At this moment, everyone was stunned and looked down at the sea below. I saw that the originally dark blue sea water was becoming more and more black. The sea surface was rough and the waves were rising and falling, and there were more and more broken ice in them. All the sea surface below seemed to have undergone subtle changes. The great pagoda master's expression changed slightly, and he quickly drew a few inducing gestures with his fingers in the air. Suddenly, a white light shot out from his sleeves. The white light suddenly dispersed and disappeared as soon as it came out of his sleeves. The great tower master closed his eyes and concentrated, as if he was sensing something. After a moment, he opened his eyes again, his expression a little solemn. The entire sea area of hundreds of nautical miles has undergone such changes. It's the palace master, Demon Phoenix suddenly said. I felt his breath. The 3 people in Kurosawa Palace exchanged glances and stopped talking. They just watched the inexplicable changes below. The people in the 7 Knights Tower looked a little horrified. If such a large-scale impact was really caused by galleons in the abyss tens of thousands of meters deep, then a new understanding of the strength of Palace Master Kurosawa is needed. Positioned. This is not something that a mere Type 4 can do. Below everyone, within a range of hundreds of nautical miles, the water began to turn black and cold inexplicably. In some places, large areas of dead fish and struggling marine life surfaced. Countless traces of invisible poisonous gas dispersed from the sea water, and the entire sea area of hundreds of nautical miles was completely polluted into a terrifying restricted area with extremely toxic poisons. Gallon deep under the sea was surrounded by green and red strands of water. Centered on his body, a thin layer of ice began to slowly spread. He raised his head and glanced at the dark top, slowly closed his eyes, and fell into complete full-force integration. A few months later. Rumble. Bursts of thunder came from the billowing black clouds. Under the black clouds, on the endless red plain. At this time, like a tide, countless nest monsters gathered in a dark mass. Huge white bats and one-horned red lizards were hovering in the sky, like flying insects all over the sky. As far as the eye could see, they were all densely packed white and red dots. At the front of countless lair monster camps, on a black and red cliff, 3 conspicuous figures were standing quietly on the edge of the cliff, looking at the huge and terrifying lair monster army in front of them. Standing at the front was a slender man wearing a green cloak, covering himself with only a pair of eyes. He carried a dark green longbow on his back and wore a green hood. His whole person seemed indescribably mysterious and quiet. The 2 figures behind him were also shrouded in large gray robes, making it impossible to see their real figures. Black clouds rolled in the sky, and now a round hole appeared faintly above the heads of the 3 people. In the round hole, a white light was projected down, forming a white beam of light, which fell straight on the man in the green cloak. He stretched out his hands, and at some point, there was a dark green exquisite longbow in his hand, which was exactly the bow and arrow he had been carrying on his back. There is a spherical thing in the middle of the longbow, and there is something vaguely rotating on it. There were 2 crisp sounds, and 2 blood-red aiming wheels, one large and one small, popped up on both sides of the bow. A small green snake slowly appeared on the bow, swimming and entwining silently. Finally, it slowly froze on the bow and turned into a snake-shaped relief. The white beam of light became brighter and brighter, and the glimmer of light reflected on the longbow became more and more obvious. The man in the green cloak held the bow and arrow tightly with both hands and raised it sharply. Boom! Countless nest creatures suddenly roared and roared like explosions. The bats and lizard-flying dragons in the sky raised their necks and roared. The black giant elephant, the 4-winged giant python, and countless strange and powerful creatures on the ground all roared and roared crazily, as if they were pouring out all their power. This is a battle of revenge, a cold male voice came from under the green cloak. Time flies, and it has been more than a year since Galen entered the Arctic abyss. The world's situation has reached a rare state of calm. The Black Sky Society concentrated all its power on Ennet. Without the Ghost Gate taking action, Ennet's Yonjai Palace was like a powerful moat lying in front of the leaders of the Black Sky Society. And the strange thing is that the Ghost Gate suddenly seemed to disappear for no apparent reason, disappearing in front of everyone. Ennet's World Totem Conference has been going on for more than a year. From the initial competition, the strongest players were selected one by one and entered the semi-finals. Over the course of a year, 18 contestants were finally selected in the semi-finals, all of whom were the most powerful top totem masters from all over the world. At the same time, enter the Evernight Palace for the finals. There are undercurrents surging in Ennet's country, and the relationships between the local aristocratic forces and legion generals, as well as external forces, as well as the Black Sky Society, are entangled and inexplicably complicated. At this moment, northwest of Ennet, at the other end of the Wikra Mountains, there was a large red plain. The countless silver legions of the Black Sky Society are fighting fiercely with countless nest monsters. This is the domain of the Master of the Nest and a forbidden place for humans. However, at this time, the countless silver totems of the Black Sky Society have invaded brazenly. This is the core place. Black-red rotting corpses and bones were everywhere, dyeing the entire plain a further black-red color, and everlasting black smoke was faintly floating in some places. It was a war weapon built by the masters of the lair, the Well of Putridity. It can cause a steady stream of armor corruption and destruction effects on hostile creatures within a radius of several kilometers. But at this time, a rancid well was like the glowing green eyes of the earth. The core energy material inside was smashed and flowed out. Some were bright and dark, and some merged into a stream of green fluorescent water, flowing meanderingly. Layers of monster corpses and silver totem bones were piled together, and countless flies and insects were buzzing. There are also scavenging insects that burrow in and out of the pile of corpses from time to time. In the center of the red plain, amid the tranquility, there was a scarlet circular blood pool among countless corpses. Two giant dragon-like white bones formed a circle, surrounding the blood pool in the middle. Beside the blood pool, the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace was sitting cross-legged on the ground. One of his eyes was wearing a black eye patch. He was still wearing the green cloak that covered his whole body, but the cloak was in tatters, with blood stains and holes everywhere. In the blood pool, countless amounts of blood were slowly rising, forming a blood-red human figure. The human figure was facing the Lord of the Heavenly God Palace, and his mouth suddenly split open, revealing a strange smile. "The time is almost up." Its voice suddenly became stronger and weaker, as if a communication device with strong signal interference was transmitting a message. "Yes." The Lord of the Heavenly God Palace was silent for a moment, and finally closed his eyes slightly. "For more than a year, you have sacrificed millions of troops just to prevent me from coming back to the inner world. What's the point?" the bloody humanoid asked in a low voice. "The price is the flesh and blood of 2-time dragons, with the original secret treasure of the retroactive bow as the core, and millions of legions as the blood pool." "What a generous act." The Lord of Tianshan Palace did not answer and was silent for a long time. "I will definitely kill you." Standing up, he turned and walked towards the distance without any hesitation.